Understanding your own worth is the foundation of every success, the cornerstone of every meaningful relationship, and the key to living a life that truly fulfills you. Many people go through life without ever fully grasping the value that they bring to the world, allowing others, even those closest to them, to dictate their sense of identity, self-esteem, and confidence. You must realize that your worth is inherent. It is not something that can be given or taken away by anyone else. And it is certainly not something that should be dependent on the opinions, approval, or behavior of family members, friends, or colleagues. The moment you allow someone else to determine how valuable you are, you surrender your power and open the door to manipulation, criticism, and toxic patterns that can cripple your emotional and spiritual growth. Recognizing your worth begins with the understanding that you were created with a purpose, a unique set of gifts, talents, and perspectives that no one else possesses. When you see yourself through the lens lies in acknowledging your value and taking the necessary steps to protect it. This awareness empowers you to confront toxic behaviors with clarity and confidence. It allows you to make decisions that align with your self-respect, whether that means setting boundaries, seeking support, or in some cases, stepping away from relationships that are harmful. Recognizing your worth also requires a shift in your mindset, a daily reaffirmation that you are deserving of love, respect, and kindness. When you internalize this truth, you stop seeking validation externally and instead root your confidence in the undeniable reality of your own significance. You realize that no one else has the authority to define who you are or what you deserve. Furthermore, understanding your worth is not selfish. It is a necessary act of self-preservation that benefits everyone around you. When you show up as a person who values themselves, you model healthy behavior for others, and you create a space in your life where positive relationships can flourish. You also become immune, to a certain extent, to the manipulations, guilt trips, and passive-aggressive tactics that toxic individuals often use to control those who undervalue themselves. It is only when you truly recognize the depth of your own worth that you can start to demand the respect that should never have been negotiable in the first place. It is only then that you can separate love from abuse, loyalty from obligation, and connection from codependency. Your worth becomes the guiding principle by which you make choices about who you allow into your life, how you respond to criticism, and which behaviors you refuse to tolerate. It transforms your perspective from one of helplessness or victimhood to one of empowerment and clarity. Every time you remind yourself of your inherent value, you reinforce a truth that no external force can undo, and you begin to understand that family, as important as it is, does not have the right to undermine the person you are meant to be. It is a mindset, a spiritual principle, and a practical strategy all at once, enabling you to navigate relationships with discernment, courage, and unwavering self-respect. When you embody this understanding fully, it touches every area of your life, your career, your friendships, your romantic relationships, and your personal development. You no longer allow fear, guilt, or obligation to dictate how you engage with others, because you know that preserving your dignity and honoring your worth is the highest form of self-love and the most powerful way to live authentically. Setting clear boundaries is one of the most essential acts of self-respect you can practice in your life. It is the invisible framework that protects your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being, allowing you to operate from a place of strength rather than weakness. Too often, people underestimate the power of boundaries, believing that love, loyalty, or family ties mean tolerating behavior that harms them, diminishes them, or steals their peace. But the truth is that boundaries are not barriers to connection. They are the foundation for healthy, authentic, and meaningful relationships. When you set boundaries, you are making a statement not just to others, but to yourself that you value your peace, your happiness, and your sense of self above temporary discomfort or the fear of conflict. Boundaries are not acts of selfishness. They are acts of courage. They require you to recognize that your time, energy, and emotional capacity are precious resources that cannot be wasted on patterns of behavior that drain you. Establishing boundaries begins with self-awareness. You must take the time to identify what behaviors, words, and actions are unacceptable to you and What conditions are necessary for you to feel safe, respected, and valued? This requires honesty and clarity, because without a firm understanding of your limits, you cannot communicate them effectively. Many people struggle with guilt, thinking that drawing a line will hurt or anger those they care about. But the reality is that tolerating toxicity causes far more harm than asserting limits. When boundaries are clear, you protect yourself from being manipulated, criticized unfairly, or emotionally exhausted. They create a framework within which relationships can flourish without compromising your integrity. Boundaries also serve as a mirror, reflecting to others how you wish to be treated. People respond to how they are allowed to engage with you. And when you consistently uphold your limits, you teach others to respect you. This is especially important in family dynamics, where long-standing patterns of entitlement or disrespect can become normalized over time. By setting boundaries, you break the cycle of tolerance for harmful behavior, and you make it clear that love does not mean enduring abuse or neglect. Furthermore, boundaries are not only about saying no to others, they are also about saying yes to yourself. They allow you to prioritize your needs, your goals, and your emotional health without apology. You begin to recognize that every time you permit someone to overstep, you are reinforcing patterns that diminish your self-worth and compromise your potential. Learning to set boundaries effectively involves consistency. It is not enough to declare a limit once and then allow it to be violated. Boundaries are maintained through deliberate and repeated action. When you hold firm, you send a message that your standards are non-negotiable. And over time, others will adjust their behavior accordingly, either out of respect or because they understand that toxic patterns will no longer be tolerated. Another essential aspect of boundaries is that they protect your energy. Life is a finite resource, and the people and situations you allow into your personal space directly impact your growth, happiness, and ability to thrive. By establishing clear limits, you ensure that your environment supports your goals rather than undermines them. You also develop a sense of empowerment, knowing that you have control over your own life, your interactions, and the influence others can have over your emotional state. Boundaries are not static. They evolve as you grow, learn, and experience more of life. What may have been acceptable at one stage of your journey may no longer serve you at another. And recognizing this allows you to recalibrate your limits with confidence. In essence, setting boundaries is a declaration of self-love and self-respect, a commitment to protecting your mind, heart, and soul from harm. It requires courage, clarity, and conviction, but it also creates the conditions for healthier, more balanced relationships. When you establish and maintain boundaries, you cultivate an inner sense of freedom, knowing that you are no longer at the mercy of others' actions or moods. You create a life in which respect, kindness, and integrity are the standard, not the exception. And you empower yourself to live authentically, to pursue your goals unhindered, and to engage with others from a place of strength rather than fear, obligation, or compromise. Boundaries are a constant reminder that your well-being matters, that your peace is sacred, and that you have the right to protect both, no matter the circumstances or the people involved, including those you love most deeply. Identifying toxic patterns in your life is one of the most critical steps toward personal freedom and emotional resilience. Because before you can protect yourself or make necessary changes, you must first see clearly what is happening around you. Many people live in a fog of denial or rationalization, excusing behaviors that are damaging simply because they come from family, long-standing relationships, or people they care about. Toxic patterns often begin subtly, almost imperceptibly, weaving themselves into everyday interaction through criticism, manipulation, control, guilt-tripping, or passive-aggressive behavior. At first, they may seem minor or ignorable, but over time, these patterns can erode your confidence, your sense of self, and your ability to make decisions that are in your best interest. Recognizing toxicity requires honesty and self-reflection, a willingness to examine how certain interactions make you feel, and a refusal to accept explanations that diminish your own experience. You must ask yourself how you feel in the presence of specific behaviors and whether these feelings leave you empowered, uplifted, and respected, or whether they leave you drained, anxious, and self-doubting. Toxic patterns often manifest as repeated cycles of emotional manipulation, such as guilt tripping, passive aggression, or constant criticism. These behaviors are designed to control your choices, influence your emotions, or undermine your confidence, often leaving you questioning your own perceptions or blaming yourself for the toxicity you endure. One of the first signs of a toxic pattern is the consistent feeling of discomfort, tension, or fear when interacting with someone. If you notice that you are walking on eggshells, constantly trying to predict or appease someone else's mood, or fearing judgment and disapproval, it is a clear indication that a toxic dynamic is present. Another indicator is repeated criticism when nothing you do seems good enough and your efforts are dismissed, belittled, or minimized. Toxic family members may make it seem as though their negativity is concern or advice, but in reality, it undermines your self-esteem and keeps you trapped in self-doubt. Manipulation is another common form of toxic behavior. This can take the shape of emotional blackmail, where you are made to feel guilty for asserting your needs or saying no, or it may involve controlling behaviors where your choices are constrained by the expectations, demands, or opinions of others. Recognizing these patterns requires courage, because it is often easier to ignore them, rationalize them, or convince yourself that enduring them is a form of loyalty or love. However, ignoring toxic behaviors does not make them disappear. It only reinforces them and allows them to continue. It is also essential to recognize that toxic patterns are not always blatant. They can be subtle, like dismissive comments disguised as jokes, constant comparison that make you feel inferior, or habitual criticism masked as helpful feedback. Learning to identify these patterns sharpens your awareness, allowing you to separate intent from impact and to see clearly which behaviors are harmful and which are not. Another critical element of recognizing toxic patterns is understanding the difference between occasional mistakes and repeated harmful behavior. Everyone makes mistakes and no relationship is perfect. But when negative behaviors become consistent and habitual, it is a signal that the pattern is toxic. These repeated behaviors are not about isolated incidents. They are about a persistent dynamic that erodes your mental and emotional well-being over time. Once you identify these patterns, you gain the power to respond intentionally rather than react unconsciously. Awareness equips you with the ability to set boundaries, assert your needs, and take steps to protect yourself without being manipulated or controlled. Identifying toxic patterns also empowers you to redefine the relationships in your life, determining which are healthy and supportive and which are damaging and limiting. This clarity allows you to make decisions from a place of knowledge rather than fear or obligation. As you become more skilled at recognizing these patterns, you begin to notice early warning signs, giving you the opportunity to act before a situation escalates or before the behavior becomes entrenched. Awareness of toxicity is a tool for liberation because it brings the unconscious into consciousness, enabling you to break free from cycles of harm, manipulation, and emotional depletion. It allows you to approach your relationships with discernment, to protect your energy, and to choose interactions that uplift, inspire, and support your growth. Recognizing toxic patterns is not a one-time event. It is a continuous practice of observation, reflection, and honesty with yourself, because the dynamics in your relationships evolve over time. And the ability to see clearly what is happening is essential for maintaining your emotional health and personal integrity. Refusing to enable negativity is one of the most powerful steps you can take toward reclaiming control of your life. Because the moment you justify, excuse, or accommodate toxic behavior, you are actively participating in the very patterns that diminish your self-worth and compromise your peace. Many people make the mistake of thinking that tolerating harmful behavior is an act of patience, love, or loyalty. But the reality is that by enabling negativity, you reinforce it, allowing it to grow stronger, more frequent, and more entrenched. Enabling does not help the person who is behaving toxically. It only reinforces their behavior, teaches them that their actions have no consequences, and undermines the boundaries and self-respect of everyone involved. When you refuse to enable negativity, you are making a conscious choice to honor yourself, to protect your mental and emotional health, and to uphold a standard of interaction that prioritizes respect, kindness, and accountability. This act requires awareness and courage, because it often means confronting uncomfortable truths, standing up for yourself, and resisting the pressures of guilt, obligation, or fear of conflict. Negativity can take many forms. It can be verbal abuse, constant criticism, manipulation, passive-aggressive behavior, jealousy, or even subtle undermining disguised as concern or advice. Regardless of the form it takes, your responsibility is to recognize that tolerating it contributes to a cycle of harm that can affect your confidence, your relationships, and your ability to grow. Refusing to enable negativity begins with self-honesty. You must acknowledge the ways in which you may have tolerated behavior that eroded your peace, dismissed your feelings, or diminished your potential. This requires a willingness to examine your own responses, patterns, and habits, because often enabling occurs unconsciously out of fear of upsetting someone, fear of judgment, or fear of isolation. Once you identify the areas where you have enabled harmful behavior, you can begin to take deliberate steps to change your responses, to communicate your needs clearly, and to reinforce the standards you deserve. Setting limits on what you will tolerate is an essential part of refusing to enable negativity. These limits are not arbitrary. They are based on a clear understanding of your self-worth, your emotional capacity, and the life you are committed to creating. By defining what is unacceptable and refusing to participate in or excuse negative behavior, you shift the dynamic. In your relationships, sending a clear message that respect, honesty, and integrity are non-negotiable. Refusing to enable negativity also means breaking free from the patterns of codependency that so often keep people trapped in harmful relationships. Many individuals tolerate toxic behavior because they believe their presence or intervention will help the other person, but in reality, enabling only prolongs the cycle of harm. Recognizing this truth allows you to step back, detach emotionally when necessary, and act from a place of wisdom rather than fear, guilt, or misplaced responsibility. Another important aspect of refusing to enable negativity is understanding that your peace and well-being are not optional, even for family members. Family ties are important, but they do not give anyone permission to diminish your value, attack your confidence, or drain your energy. Upholding your boundaries, refusing to participate in harmful dynamics, and prioritizing your own mental and emotional health are acts of love not only for yourself, but also for the broader system, because they create a standard for healthy interactions and prevent cycles of dysfunction from continuing unchecked. Refusing to enable negativity requires consistency and courage. It is not enough to occasionally speak up or resist harmful behavior. You must maintain your standards with unwavering commitment, regardless of external pressures or expectations. Over time, this consistency reshapes the way others interact with you, teaches them accountability, and reinforces the truth that your peace is sacred, your boundaries are real, and your worth is non-negotiable. This act of refusal transforms the energy of your life, creating space for positive, supportive, and empowering relationships while removing patterns that deplete, control, or harm you. It also strengthens your character, instills confidence, and builds resilience because you learn that you are capable of standing firm, making difficult choices, and protecting yourself without apology. When you refuse to enable negativity, you reclaim your power, assert your autonomy, and demonstrate that you will not allow others to dictate the quality of your life or compromise your emotional and spiritual health in the name of loyalty, love, or obligation. Prioritizing emotional health is one of the most important decisions you can make in life because it is the foundation upon which every success, every meaningful relationship, and every moment of genuine happiness is built. Too often, people sacrifice their emotional well-being in the name of loyalty, obligation, or fear of hurting others, believing that enduring discomfort or negativity is a sign of strength or love. But the truth is that ignoring your own emotional needs and tolerating harmful behavior is not an act of bravery, it is an act of self-neglect that slowly erodes your confidence, your sense of self, and your ability to fully engage with life. Emotional health is not a luxury, it is a necessity. It is the lens through which you perceive the world, the engine that drives your decision-making, and the source of your resilience in the face of challenges. When you prioritize your emotional health, you create the capacity to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively, to maintain clarity even in the midst of chaos, and to navigate relationships without being unduly influenced by manipulation, criticism, or toxicity. One of the first steps in prioritizing emotional health is recognizing that your feelings are valid and important. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and you cannot give love, support, or guidance to others if your own emotional needs are constantly neglected. It is essential to acknowledge when behaviors, words, or patterns of interaction leave you feeling drained, anxious, or diminished, because these are signals that your emotional boundaries are being tested or violated. Prioritizing emotional health also involves developing self-awareness and mindfulness. You must learn to recognize the triggers, habits, and dynamics that affect your emotional state. And you must take responsibility for the choices you make in response. This does not mean blaming yourself for the actions of others, but rather understanding how you can protect your peace, manage your reactions, and maintain stability in the face of negativity. Another critical aspect of emotional health is learning to detach from harmful dynamics without detaching from your values or your integrity. You can care for family members, friends, or colleagues while refusing to accept behavior that compromises your well-being. This requires clarity, courage, and a deep understanding that prioritizing yourself is not selfish. It is necessary for your growth, your happiness, and your ability to positively influence the world around you. Prioritizing emotional health also means cultivating practices that nurture resilience, balance, and inner peace. These may include reflection, meditation, journaling, physical activity, or seeking support from mentors, coaches, or therapists. By investing in these practices, you strengthen your ability to withstand challenges, maintain clarity in decision-making, and navigate complex relationships without losing sight of your own needs. When you commit to prioritizing your emotional health, you also redefine the way others engage with you. People respond to the energy and boundaries you project, and when you consistently demonstrate that your well-being is non-negotiable, you create a standard of interaction that discourages toxic behavior and encourages respect, kindness, and accountability. Emotional health empowers you to set limits, to speak up when necessary, and to remove yourself from situations that compromise your peace without guilt or hesitation. It gives you the clarity to recognize which relationships are supportive and which are detrimental, and it equips you with the courage to make difficult decisions in alignment with your highest good. Furthermore, prioritizing emotional health fosters self-respect and self-esteem. When you take care of your feelings, honor your limits, and refuse to tolerate abuse or negativity, you send a message to yourself and to the world that you are worthy of love, respect, and joy. This self-respect is contagious, influencing the energy you bring to every interaction and shaping the quality of the relationships and opportunities you attract. It also provides a shield against manipulation, guilt-tripping, and control, because you understand that your peace and happiness are yours to protect, and that no one has the right to compromise them without your consent. Emotional health is the foundation of personal empowerment. It allows you to think clearly, act decisively, and create a life that aligns with your values, your purpose, and your potential. By prioritizing your emotional well-being, you build resilience against adversity, clarity in decision-making, and a capacity for meaningful connection, ensuring that you operate from a place of strength rather than fear, depletion, or codependency. Every time you choose to honor your emotions, you reinforce the principle that your life, your peace, and your happiness are worth defending. And you cultivate the energy, focus, and stability required to thrive in every area of your existence. Taking action courageously is the defining step that transforms awareness and understanding into real life-altering change, because knowledge alone is not enough. Many people spend years recognizing toxic behaviors, setting boundaries, and prioritizing their well-being, yet they fail to act decisively, leaving themselves trapped in cycles of harm, manipulation, and emotional depletion. Courageous action is the bridge between knowing what is right and living it fully, and it is the force that allows you to claim your life, assert your boundaries, and create an environment that nurtures your growth and happiness. Acting courageously requires confronting fear, fear of conflict, fear of losing relationships, fear of judgment, or fear of disappointing others. These fears are natural, but they must not be allowed to dictate your decisions or limit your potential. When you act courageously, you rise above fear and choose integrity, self-respect, and empowerment over comfort, avoidance, or conformity. Courageous action often begins with small but deliberate steps. It may be as simple as expressing your feelings honestly, saying no to behavior that compromises your well-being, or removing yourself from situations where negativity dominates. Each act, no matter how small, reinforces your commitment to your own life, sends a message to others that you will not tolerate disrespect, and strengthens your confidence to take even bolder steps. Taking courageous action also involves being honest with yourself about the relationships and environments in which you live. Some connections, even family ties, may be inherently toxic or harmful. And recognizing this truth is only the first part of the process. The next and more difficult step is to take action to protect yourself, whether that means confronting the behavior directly, seeking professional guidance, creating distance, or in some cases, cutting ties entirely. Action without courage is ineffective because it is easily undermined by doubt, hesitation, or fear of consequences. Courageous action, however, is informed by clarity, conviction, and a deep understanding of your worth, purpose, and the life you are determined to create. It is not reckless. It is intentional, deliberate, and aligned with your highest good. Another aspect of courageous action is the willingness to accept responsibility for your choices. Many people wait for external circumstances to change, for others to apologize, or for situations to improve on their own, but real change occurs when you take ownership of your life and make the decisions necessary to protect your peace, your health, and your personal growth. Courageous action is also about perseverance. It is not a one-time effort, but a consistent practice of maintaining boundaries, refusing to tolerate harmful behavior, and standing firm in your principles even when others resist, question, or criticize you. Each act of courage compounds, creating a momentum that transforms your environment, your relationships, and your sense of self. Taking action courageously requires self-trust. You must believe in your judgment, your intuition, and your ability to navigate the consequences of your decisions. This self-trust is cultivated through repeated practice, speaking your truth, enforcing your limits, and demonstrating to yourself that you are capable of protecting your life from toxicity and negativity. Courageous action is often uncomfortable because it challenges entrenched patterns, confronts familiar dynamics, and disrupts the status quo. Yet, discomfort is a sign of growth. It is an indication that you are stepping into a higher level of self-respect, awareness, and empowerment. By embracing discomfort instead of avoiding it, you cultivate resilience, confidence, and a sense of agency over your life. Furthermore, taking courageous action inspires those around you. It sets an example for others who may feel trapped in toxic situations, showing them that it is possible to reclaim one's life, assert one's boundaries, and live with dignity, even in the face of fear or opposition. Courage is contagious because it demonstrates the power of commitment, clarity, and self-respect in action. Finally, courageous action is the ultimate form of self-love and personal integrity. It validates your worth, protects your emotional and spiritual well-being, and empowers you to live authentically without apology or compromise. It transforms awareness into transformation, understanding into empowerment, and intention into reality, ensuring that you are no longer a passive participant in the negative dynamics of your life, but the active architect of your own destiny, capable of shaping your relationship, environment, and future according to the principles of respect, dignity, and self-respect.